So right now we saw minus 8.1, right? So when I keep increasing it right now, so you can see that at 10 dB, my input is way above the 0 dB threshold. So my reduction was also exactly, reducing that. So I got a 2.8 reduction. My output is 0, right? So output levels are not distorting. At the same time, this limiter is working. All of us have to use limiter in our tracks in order to bring the volume level that is suitable for streaming services like Spotify, Apple Music, or even on YouTube. So if you don't know how to use a limiter in your track, you have clicked the right video. I'm Florina Jain, otherwise known as Flow of Music, and today we are going to learn all about limiter and how to actually use limiter on your tracks. And if you like production videos like this, you need to subscribe to my channel so that you will be getting videos weekly on music production. So without any delay, let's get started. Before we start this, you need to understand that limiter is mainly used for mastering, and it is usually the last plugin that you will ever apply in your tracks. That is the last plugin because you will basically increase all your levels suitable for streaming services, and that is the end of your mixing and mastering. The thing is, when you start with limiter, always loop the section that is the most loudest in your track. I'm just going to highlight this particular section because that is the loudest and I'm going to work my way through it. To add a limiter, you go to the audio effects of that channel, come down to dynamics, and at the bottom you have limiter. So you just select limiter mono, and this is how a limiter will look like. Okay, so we're going to go through each and every knob that you can see here. The first knob is the input. So input is the place where it will show you the level of signal coming inside your DAW or inside this plugin. So when I play something, so this minus 11.5 is the level of input signal coming in. So that is my peak input coming inside. So this reduction, one thing you need to understand is that limiter is like a compressor but with extreme settings. What do you mean by a compressor? When you have stuff that is too loud, you lower it down. When you have some sound that is too soft, it brings it up, right? Whereas when you take a limiter, if you set the limit, for example, if I set my threshold as -1, how much ever farther it goes, okay, if it goes beyond -1 even a little bit, it immediately brings it to -1, okay, without a hesitation. It just brings it to -1, and that's how it locks the volume in. So I have a threshold at 0 dB. Now any signal past that 0 dB gets compressed. So how much does it get compressed is shown by this particular graph, this reduction. Output is how much volume comes out, or the peak volume after all this has happened. You have a couple of knobs over here which I'm going to explain now. The gain basically tells you how much of gain are you going to increase. So right now we saw minus 8.1, right? So when I keep increasing it right now, so you can see that at 10 dB, my input is way above the 0 dB threshold. So my reduction was also exactly, reducing that. So I got a 2.8 reduction. My output is 0, right? So output levels are not distorting. At the same time, this limiter is working. So as I increase the gain level, the amount of input signal increases. When it goes beyond the threshold, this limiter just compresses that signal so that it comes under the threshold level. So that is the purpose of gain. Release is how fast your limiter is going to stop acting on the audio track after it has passed that threshold. So say my signal went past threshold of 0 dB and now it has come back. So how fast is the limiter going to stop acting? So that is determined by release. So you don't need a really fast release or a very late release. You can have it typically somewhere in the middle, somewhere 120 or 200 is also fine. Somewhere in the middle, find that sweet spot. Because if it's too fast, then it becomes jumpy. It becomes very punchy kind of a sound. If it's too slow, then it takes a lot of time for the limiter to turn off, right? After it has passed the threshold. Now this output level is the threshold that you set. I was telling you so long that it was in 0 dB, the threshold, because here I have set it to 0 dB. But typically it would be better you leave some gap. I would usually, keep it to -1. So -1 is my output level. So anything that goes past -1 gets compressed. So I did an extreme setting right now. So my input was 6.3, my reduction was 6.4. You can see that my output stayed to -1. Okay, it did not go beyond that because that is the threshold that I have set. So you can set different threshold levels, but it's always better you stick somewhere around -1. -0.5 is also fine. Leave that tiny bit of gap, okay? Don't keep it on the dot as 0 dB. Now look ahead is how fast your compression is going to act before it goes beyond that threshold level. You also have two different modes over here. Legacy just gives you a soft knee. So you know how a knee works in a compressor, right? The change or the compression happens gradually. So the knee means you will have it as a very curved graph. The compression happens a little gently, whereas for precision it might happen a little harshly. Okay, so I usually don't mess around with these settings. I only change these. In addition, you also have some presets over here. So you can choose whatever you want, but it's better you work your way through this. So now that you know what a limiter is and what different knobs do in a limiter, let's figure out what the ideal levels are that you need to, increase. I usually put a plugin called as a multimeter under this, or you can also put a loudness meter. So now what we're going to do is add a loudness meter under this limiter. So you go down to metering and you have loudness meter, mono. So it's better you keep both the limiter and the loudness meter simultaneously beside each other, so it's easier to track. So let's look at what's happening with these drastic settings that I already had. Right now you saw that there were many graphs you were getting. Our focus is in this S, which is the stereo. So right now I'm getting it at around -12. The ideal range for streaming services and basically for any output service is between -12 to, I would even say, -9. So anywhere around that range is a good output for your track. So you basically increase it with regards to that. So what we're going to do now is set a reasonable release time. My output is -1. Look ahead, I'm not going to change. Now I'm going to listen to the track and let's see how far I can push this. I need to push this gain knob in order to get around -12 to -9. -12. So when you get it around -12, that is a desirable range. You can even keep it from -14 to -9, okay? Anywhere between that range is a good place for you to export the track. And one thing to keep in mind, right now for this track, I was getting a reduction of around 10 dB, and that is a lot, okay? So that is because there are a lot of changes that I need to do, a lot of mixing and mastering that I'm yet to do, but only for the sake of this tutorial, I was using this. So ideally, it's better to get a reduction, maximum around 6 dB, not more than that, but it's not a hard and fast rule, okay? Just listen to it, because what is your limiter doing is basically compressing anything that goes beyond a threshold level. So imagine too much of compression happening, then you're losing a lot of signal. You're basically losing a lot of frequencies that you need. So you need to make sure to not reduce a lot. So always bear that in mind while you are doing the limiter. If you're asking me what I need to do in order to not have a lot of reduction but also have the right volume, then that involves mixing and mastering properly. Right now we didn't discuss entirely about mastering. This is just the one plugin that we were focusing on, and that is limiter. There are also a lot of other tutorials that I have done with regards to mixing, with regards to mastering, when it comes to individual plugins like EQ, delay, reverb, compression, and all those things. You can check them all out using the link that you see in the screen, or you can go over to my YouTube channel and check them out. So I'm just going to show you what I exactly did. I use a third-party plugin. So this is the limiter that I have used. This comes along with Fab Filters, and this is the gain knob that you saw previously. Okay, so I had to increase the gain to match the output level, right? To match the level for streaming services, right? So that I need to do it over here. So this is the level that I have increased. Let's see what the output level we are getting. Okay, we can also add a multimeter over here. So I added the multimeter in the stereo out. Let's just check what we are getting. So you can see that I'm getting around -9, right? And my reduction. So you saw the reduction over there. I'm getting around -3.5 here. This is where I get my reduction, which is really good, right? Like right there, because I didn't do a lot of processing, I had drastic changes, but now it is fine. This is with regards to a third-party plugin. I just wanted to show you what I have done. So that is how you use a limiter, and usually limiter is the last plugin you use in your track, apart from obviously the loudness meter, because you don't do any change using the loudness meter, you just check your levels. If you found this video useful, please do comment below. I'll be happy to read your comments. Keep learning, never stop making music, and I'll see you guys in another video.